The question is that this bill be now read a second time, and I call the honourable member for Warringah.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. And I rise to strongly support this bill, but I also would like to say we need to go further in addressing deepfakes. Whilst this bill addresses deepfakes in a very specific context when it comes to non-consensual sexual material, and that is horrendous, and I welcome that it will soon be a crime, we need to address the broader question of deepfakes and use of AI, especially when it comes to advertising, where, for example, a consumer is misled into thinking an image or something presented to them is real when in fact it is AI generated, or in fact all forms of non-consensual use of a deepfake material using a person's name, image and likeness, and I'll come to that. And so in that respect, I move the amendment as circulated in my name. We need to send, in relation to materials of this, the court by this bill in relation to sexual material, absolutely, we need to send a strong and unambiguous message that distributing deepfakes of non-consensual sexual material is horrendous and will be a crime. A person's identity is their own and must be protected. A non-consensual sharing of deepfake of sexual material is a disturbing and damaging form of abuse. Victims face humiliation, mental distress, and effects on their reputation and relationships. They experience intense emotional distress, including anxiety, depression, and a profound sense of violation. The psychological and social effects of deepfake pornography are severe, and they can impact from the smallest person, unsuspecting, from students and maybe someone sort of fairly anonymous, to, we know recently someone like Taylor Swift had an incident herself where deepfakes were made in relation to her image and likeness. So we know they can spread rapidly online, making it nearly impossible for victims to remove the content. This persistent digital footprint can have long-lasting repercussions on their personal and professional lives, impacting their relationships, career prospects and mental health. This bill is crucial for safeguarding the dignity, privacy and safety of all Australians, particularly women and girls. And while I welcome the bill, the government is well behind other jurisdictions when it comes to grappling with the broader issues of deepfakes that deepfakes present. As we enter this era of AI technology, deepfake pornography has become an increasingly prevalent issue. Manipulation of images or video has been an issue for some time, but advances in technology over recent years have made it far easier to produce this sort of fake content. It's so realistic that it's indistinguishable to the naked eye. What once required significant time, skill and resources can now be done instantaneously with minimal effort or skill required. Advances in AI have taken this even further, allowing rapid generation of content that is extremely realistic and incredibly difficult to identify as being fake. So this form of online abuse involves using artificial images to create fake videos or images that depict individuals in sexually explicit scenarios without their consent. And the statistics are quite shocking. 96% of all deepfake videos online are pornographic. 99% of deepfake pornography targets women. And there was a 2,000% rise in 2023 in the number of websites generating non-consensual sexual material using AI. 2,000% rise. But we need to go further. So not only should deepfakes of this nature be banned, but we do need to think about where deepfakes are using and usurping another person's name, identity, likeness, and using it without their consent. And that's why this amendment is important for the government to be on notice that it must do more to look at the broader picture of deepfakes across all the different ways in which they're used. So in relation to this bill, let's consider the broader impact. A 2024 Australian study found that more than 52% of boys and 32% of girls had reported viewing pornography by the age of 14. And for most parents, that's quite shocking because it's of a completely different nature. This is not about the magazines and those back sort of from previous eras. It's of a whole different nature and incredibly more confronting. And the statistic is alarming for its implications on young people's perceptions of sex, consent and relationships. What forms a healthy, respectful relationship? Exposure to pornography at a young age, particularly material generated by AI, or certainly non-consensual use of other images, can distort their understanding of healthy and respectful relationships. Further, our current crisis of intimate partner violence, particularly against women, demands strong and immediate preventative action against harmful ways that distort young people's understanding of consent and how to treat partners respectfully. So this bill does send a clear message that technology should not be used as a tool for abuse. With this bill, the criminal code is being amended to make it an offence to use a carriage service for non-consensual sexual material. Governments are also, though, I should say, failing when it comes to preventing children from having access to AI-generating pornography websites. Websites are legal in Australia with nothing being done to prevent access by children, and so that is another area that must be addressed. As reported just recently, this weekend in the Sydney Morning Herald, more than 100,000 people use the Undress AI website every day. According to the article, users upload a photo, choose from picture settings like nude, BDSM or sex, and from age options including subtract 5, just even that concept is quite revolting, which uses AI to make the subject look 5 years younger. This is a supply chain issue. There are not just the users, but the application companies, the app stores that allow these apps on their platforms, search engines, and even credit card companies that facilitate payment and use of these tools. There are, of course, also broader considerations. I note that this bill is framed in the context of distribution of sexual content without consent and does not directly regulate all deepfakes created using the identity of people without their consent. But the bill before us does not define deepfakes, nor does it address the many other risks that deepfakes pose beyond sexual consent. And that is why the amendment I move is important and why it should be addressed. The government states that there is a number of work streams on foot to tackle deepfakes in other parts of government under the industry department and further electoral reform. But greater action and ambition are needed. As a former professional athlete, I know from experience the one thing you have to attract sponsors and earn a living as an athlete is the sale of your name, image and likeness, and these are clauses you have in your contracts. But what we now see with deepfakes is that can be usurped and that can be taken over without consent and to great damage. And so it's important that we recognise that a person owns their own IP and should be able to give consent to it being used or manipulated, and that contractual right now needs to be recognised and pulled into legislation and apply to all deepfakes created using a person's name, image or likeness and voice without their consent. So no deepfakes should be permitted to the extent that they infringe on an individual's right to their own identity. Because we are living in an advanced technological and digital age that has seen an immense and very fast progress, but also new challenges that demand our attention and that as lawmakers we should be addressing. So AI is moving faster than any regulator can keep up with, but that's not an excuse. So government needs to get on the front foot. Other countries, including the United States, the European Union, China and the United Kingdom, are acting faster than Australia in combating and regulating against use of non-consensual deepfakes. Just this month, Republican and Democratic senators have co-sponsored a bill to require social media companies to take down deepfakes within 2 days of them being reported to them. The European Union has passed the world's first comprehensive AI law, including a requirement for deepfakes to contain a watermark to inform users that they are fake images. Because put yourself in the seat of a consumer that sees advertising, for example, and it might look unrealistic, but without, for example, this watermark as legislated by the European Union, how would a person know that this is what is real and what is fake? And so I very much urge the government to consider the European Union legislation when it comes to that use of watermark, to inform viewers that what they are looking at is an AI-generated deepfake, not a real image. The stakes are high, and the roadmap to implement further steps needs to be considered by the government. There are always implications with technological advancements, and sometimes they are for good and sometimes they are deeply concerning. It's imperative that we recognise the risks of deepfakes, present inherent risks, including the spread of misinformation. So again, talking about that viewers, consumers not being aware that they are deepfakes. Then we of course have those threats to privacy and security, altering election outcomes and misleading, deceiving voters. I've been a long-term advocate for protecting voters from misinformation and disinformation, and I've introduced the Private Members Bill, the Voter Protections Bills, which bans the use of deepfakes in political advertising. The integrity of our electoral process and campaigning is also threatened, alongside the outcomes of the Australians' democratic right to choose government and elect their representative. The Australian Electoral Commissioner has warned that it does not have the tools to detect or deter AI-generated misinformation at the upcoming federal election, and that Australia is not ready for its first AI election. That is concerning, and yet we still have not seen from the government the action, despite a commitment to do so, to move in terms of either debating the voter protections bill that I have tabled or introducing its own legislation to ensure there is no misinformation and deceptive and misleading political advertising. So we've seen huge amounts of misinformation and disinformation. Often it's identifiable as being misinformation and disinformation, but at least from a source that doesn't look like the very people you trust. And it's not only for elections, huge individual losses for individuals and corporations that are being seen as a result of scams. Scams often use deep fakes. Only a few years ago, the biggest scam a company faced was false invoices. Now it's deep fakes. British engineering firm Arup lost $25 million earlier this year when a deepfake video of company executives was used to convince an employee to transfer the money after they took a video call, as others seen in the call sounded and looked like colleagues he recognised. In March this year, the ACCC reported that last year, Australians lost some $8 million to online investment trading platform scams, and only last week, the Seven Network's YouTube channel was hacked and branded with fake Tesla content to promote a cryptocurrency scheme. The National Anti-Scam Centre is warning consumers that they need to be much more aware of fake news articles and deepfake videos of public figures that endorse and link to online investment trading platform scams, particularly on social media, especially the ones taking Hollywood actors, high-profile people. They are using deepfakes of these people to then try and scam people, especially when it comes to financial scams. In Australia, deepfakes of politicians, including senior federal government ministers, are being used to promote these fake financial schemes as well. So I welcome the work that is being done by the government, including their interim response to the Safe and Responsible AI consultation and the establishment of the Artificial Intelligence Experts Group. I also acknowledge the work done by the Australian Human Rights Commission on adopting AI in Australia, which calls on the government to adopt watermarking as a priority. It must also be highlighted the risks that AI presents to embedding past biases, inequalities, including gender and race-based, in up to 44% of AI models. So, for example, it's just continuing this idea of generally white Caucasian male as being the norm, and that is embedded in those AI models. For example, doctors are always considered men, nurses are always described as women, and poor people as people of colour. That is what happens in those AI models. It's an issue that's been highlighted not only by the Australian Human Rights Commissioner, but the United Nations and other jurisdictions. So I fully support an extensive ban on deepfakes without consent. And I fully support this bill as a first step in creating a safer online environment for all Australians, but particularly for women. We need further, faster action from the government on a number of fronts with AI, so I urge them to act. Let us not forget the need for education and awareness. We need to make sure young people are aware about the danger and legal ramifications of creating and sharing deepfake content that will come as a result of this legislation, and the implementation of this bill is accompanied by a robust support system for victims, offering psychological, legal and social assistance. So I commend the bill to the House, but I also urge the government to take note of the amendment moved.